Hi everyone and welcome to New Breakpoint. My name is Michelle Sandford. I am the Developer Engagement Lead for Microsoft in Asia. New Breakpoint is a show for developers by developers, and we have exciting guests each time, and we go out on the second Thursday of every month. During the show you can ask us questions and we will all be online answering them, and we'll also try and hang around for about 10 minutes afterwards to follow up on any of the questions that you couldn't get out during the episode. You can find our resources on GitHub. I'd like to welcome during this episode the team from PatientNotes. I have with me CEO Jason, Marketing Manager Sarah, and Head of Clinical and Customer Success, Darren. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about the business. How did you all come together? How did this business start? One of the things I find most interesting with startups is you cannot be successful unless you have the right team, and a lot of startups just break up, have like explosive breakups because they don't get on well together and they have disagreements. So tell me everything.
PatientNotes started just as a very little idea of mine, and that's because my wife is a physiotherapist. So she was complaining for many years. She'd come home from work and say, "Oh, I was late today because I had to do my notes." And it's a story which is very common. And one day she was late coming home, and I was playing around with some technology, and I said to her, "I bet you I could write your notes for you just by listening to the consult." And she said, "There's no way you can do that." And in life, that's all I need, someone to just tell me, like, you can't do that. So I built a little prototype, and then really I was just building something for her, you know. But then all of a sudden I ran into Sarah at an event, and it was actually an OpenAI event when Sam Altman was in town in Melbourne, and showed Sarah my demo, and Sarah was like, "This is so powerful, like we need to build this." So Sarah got really interested, and then Darren was the first person after my wife who used it, and Darren got addicted and said, like, we need to do this. And then all of a sudden we also had our other co-founder Lachlan, who's been a long-time friend of mine as well, and is technical as well, and we just came together and started building something mostly out of the love of solving the problem, rather than sitting down as a group and thinking we're going to build a startup. We built something. Darren loved it and it was being used every day. We thought we've got to come together and like give this to more people. We've got to enable medical practitioners to have this type of technology. So that was very like the origin, the first few months. And then, where have we gone from there?
Since then, we've launched, we started targeting physiotherapists. Obviously, having one on the team helps a lot, and given that was the inspiration in the first place. And so then we set up our website, and then we thought, oh yeah, well, we'll just start in Australia and we'll just start with physiotherapists. Once you put something on the internet, you just get people who start knocking on your door. And so we started getting more and more practitioners asking to use it or just signing up. And that was really great. And again, we thought we'd start in Australia. We got a couple of people from New Zealand who heard about it. And then they started trickling in from America, and then they've come from Ireland, and they've come from these different places. And so now we have, people who are using it all over the world. We've had our first users in mainland China, which has been really, an adventure for us to navigate how all of that works. Just people hearing about it and then sharing it with other practitioners has been really, really great. We've had explosions in different communities that have sort of kicked off, like, oh, who heard about this? And it's been really great to see people signing up, but also giving us feedback on what would make it better for their professions. So Jason spent a long time I'll say in customer service, but that's very underselling Jason's role, which I'm sure he'll talk about. But we have a very service-oriented or success-oriented approach to our product, which is that we want people to use it because it will be helpful to them. And so we listen to that feedback and have been able to iterate the product based on how people are using it in real life. So yeah, that's been really, really great to be able to develop it for different professions and their specific needs, as well as that making it better for all practitioners. So it's been very exciting.
There's a fun story there. Can I tell you it?
Yeah, tell.
So in the early days, as these people were signing up, we thought, gee, we really need to make sure that it's working really well for them. So we put in a thumbs up and a thumbs down of whether we generated good notes or not for them. And any time there was a thumbs down, that would like alert us, and we were on call. So we would like wake up whenever someone pressed a thumbs down button.
Oh, goodness.
Which is like the most unscalable thing you can do. And it sort of tipped me over the edge when a customer signed up in the UK, because it was fine during Australia, but then someone signed up in the UK and pressed thumbs down at 3 a.m. at night, and I get paged, and I like wake up out of bed and look at my phone, and you know, I sit down and I write them a message and then go back to sleep. The next night, same person presses thumbs down, and I'm just like, oh, why did I do this? But ultimately, that person went on to become a really great customer, and we learnt a lot from it. And I think those are the types of interactions you just have to do when you're a small business to really make sure that you're building something people love and is really useful.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, I use that thumbs down when I'm using OpenAI stuff or when I'm arguing with ChatGPT or something else, because I do think it needs to learn. It needs to learn.
Totally.
And when I put stuff in there, it is really thoughtful around what is wrong. And I would imagine that with health, people are even more specific about, you know, why this is a bad thing.
Sometimes. No, what really matters with health professionals is how much time they have. They're all thoughtful people who care a lot about like other people and are empathetic, but they're so time poor that they'll be like thumbs down, and sometimes they'll just have to move on because they've got a queue of 3 people waiting outside their door for them. They can't sort of be hoping that they'll train an AI system by sitting there and typing really, really good notes. So that's been an interesting learning for us as well. Like, how do we get really good feedback from these people who are so time poor?
Because in the beginning, it was just all him, right?
A lot of it, right? Like, you have to, when you're starting a business, I'm a true believer that you have to start with obsessing over a few customers and really understanding what's going wrong and finding those customers who give you great feedback. And the best way to do that is to find like those handful. And Darren he just fit it, but then, you know, got so addicted that now he's part of the team.
Yeah. I do want to ask just quickly about the Chinese one.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So is it notes in Chinese?
Oh, it's actually someone who was, they work across a number of different countries, but they're based in mainland China. And some of the notes, I'll have to check, but I think because of we have been able to create different language variations, but where that has become really, when you mention the multiple languages, it's been very useful for people who need to create patient summaries in a different language. So Darren, you could probably speak more directly to that. But.
Yeah, I've had a couple of situations where a patient's come in with an interpreter, and I've been able to provide them a summary in Cantonese, in French, in their primary language, and it was really cool to be able to do that. Like, I'm thinking I'm the only physio in Australia that's actually listened, and then I'm printing it out because I don't speak those languages. But more importantly, you just looked at the patient who didn't speak a word of English and they just glowed. They'd been heard because their son, who had interpreted everything that's true to the word, and then their journey was on a really good foundation, and they had an amazing outcome. So I really feel that contributed to their success.
I've seen that in so many TV shows where the interpreter doesn't accurately interpret what the patient says. And it must be, it must be such a relief to be able to read that in your own language and be certain that what you have said has properly been communicated, and that you can, in your own time, read back what you need to do and what it means to you. That must be so scary.
Well, one of the biggest things is we all know when we go into any medical person, the anxiety of what's wrong with me. And you go, oh, okay, well, it's just a sore neck. Sarah, here it is in Cantonese. It's just a sore neck and we can help you. That's 90% of my therapy there and then. So, yeah.
So, Sarah, you all used Founders Hub as part of this process. What can you tell me about that?
Well, I've become a raving fan. I mean, I had been across Founders Hub for quite a while, particularly because there's a lot of education around how to build a startup. There's a lot of material that I knew was available because people had said to me, yeah, there's training in there. You can go sort it out. And so when we started PatientNotes, I was like, we should log in and really have a look at what else there is to be able to access. And so when we did that, we were able to tap into a lot of things that really surprised me. I was really overwhelmed at some of the value that we were able to get. Like even things like the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Stuff that when you're a startup, every dollar matters, every dollar counts, but being able to have access to professional tools allows you to be able to more quickly reach customers in a way that they're expecting. Particularly when we're working in health, most people are using Microsoft products, and so being able to be in that same ecosystem is really, really important. We've also been able to tap into, we've been using GitHub Enterprise, and you and I have talked about this before, but the ability to use code spaces was something that I really valued early on because, Jason, do you want to chat about how you were like firing up code spaces for me?
Well, I just think Sarah's a co-founder, but also running a lot of our marketing stuff. And she's incredible that she codes as well. So, Sarah was just adding stuff into the main application because we had code spaces basically spun up for her, and it was super easy for her to jump in and edit changes. Mm-hmm. Little things like that really make a difference. Especially, I've come previously, I was at Zendesk and I was senior vice president at Zendesk for many years, and you get used to the tools. And then when you go and build a startup, you're like, oh, this is easy if I have access to the tool.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we found. We could just get access to some of those tools for the few months that we needed to get over a hurdle.
Oh, yeah, well, I would have thought that your biggest concern as a startup is around the security, privacy, and compliance. And if you have access to GitHub Enterprise, then you're not worried that you're going to be compromised because all of that stuff is built in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, you're not being scrappy with the tools that matter because you have access to the correct resources. And they're the resources you would need when you're a more mature startup anyway. So being able to start from there, it also means that we can build systems the right way and not have to rebuild them later. And that's the systems of how we run our company, but also just the actual technical systems as well. So GitHub Enterprise has been an incredible part of that you get access to with Startup Founders Hub. I think also being able to tap into different credit systems. So being able to use the Azure credits, it's a tiered approach. So the actual support that is wrapped around that is also really good because Microsoft is checking in on, hey, are you using that properly? Have you got things set up right? And, we don't know what we don't know when we're setting things up from scratch. It's nice to know that someone's got our back. And so all of those things have been really, really wonderful. And there's a heap of stuff that we still haven't even tapped into yet. So, and I think what's great is that being able to look at that as a 12-month journey of when we will be able to use some of those other things. Just recently, we've started being able to tap into the support around the commercial marketplace, for example. Now, we didn't need that when we signed up to Founders Hub, 8 months ago, but being able to use that now at a time when things are kicking off, it's like, great, this is a really comprehensive end-to-end support network for founders. One of the other things now that I'm looking forward to using is some of the advisors. So when you log into Founders Hub, you can see all of the different advisors from around the world in different specialties. Being able to tap into an expert, say, do you mind if we have a quick chat? Just even knowing that's there is like a support that I have not really felt before as a founder or even previously in other businesses. It's really something that I highly encourage people to do, and anyone can be a founder who can join Startup Founders Hub. So if you're even thinking about creating a startup, signing up to the Founders Hub to be able to look at what support you might get might then actually help you then create that startup.
So you said it was tiered, so you can start with nothing pretty much, and then the faster and bigger you grow, the more you get? Is that how?
Yeah, so you unlock different levels of credits. And so the purpose of the unlock is, so you sort of have a bit of a checkpoint to say, have you done the things you need to do to get to the next level of being a startup? So it's a very supportive checkpoint as opposed to a do not cross until you've met our criteria checkpoint. And I think that's what I like about it, is it's, when you're a founder and you're doing everything, it's nice to have a checklist. It's nice to be able to go, yeah, you know what? Actually, I probably should have done that. And that's particularly in those guides. That's another thing to be able to cross-check against. Or if you move too fast and skip it and then someone suddenly asks you for something, you can go back and be like, oh, hang on, I think there might be a template for that somewhere that I could probably borrow and, put together a pitch deck or put together a letter to an investor. And those sorts of resources are just invaluable to be able to have.
You, Sarah, you've been involved in a lot of startups, and Jay, yeah, quite a few as well. Is the speed that you're moving at fast, do you think, for a startup? Or
I think so, but I think a big part of that is how fast AI is moving at the moment. And that's where this particular program has been, I think pretty crucial to us being able to accelerate growth, because it's got all of the things that we actually need. We need Azure credits. We need to be able to do that. And that credit will set us up for success over the longer term. That will make us a very long-term Azure customer. And I think that support and being able, as I said, building from the start the right way that we want to be able to build is incredible. And I just wish more people would open up these tools and have a play. As I said, anyone can join up to Founders Hub, whether you already have a startup or whether you're just in the idea phase. Fire up GitHub Enterprise, fire up some of those training programs. There's also a number of certs that I think that you can get access to as well. So even if you're just a developer who one day might aspire to be a founder, where else can you get that stuff? And it's been free. So free is good, especially as a founder. But I think that the support Microsoft gives will allow them to see that return when all of these great AI companies are going to be built in the not too distant future.
that sounds awesome. I wish I was in there, actually. It has never occurred to me because I have no startup dreams. I feel like I would never be the main man in a startup. I could be like the third one in there.
Yeah, but
I could be the augmenting person.
You could be the main.
that's it. We could start the Michelle Sandford startup. Maybe after this, you and I, we jump in and we have a play.
Spoken like a true marketing
That's
professional.
it.
She was like, I could sell this.
Yeah, totally. It's free.
You know, like I come from a background where I was spending over $100 million a year on cloud products, and I'd never used the Microsoft Cloud.
Oh my goodness.
And Sarah sort of had to convince me that it was a good idea to use this. And now, like, it's by far the most friendly startup program which any of the major cloud providers use. And it's helped us the most out of any of those programs. It's like, how cool is that? You know, like, I've just been radically transformed. Even little things like access to support is really good compared to the other cloud providers. Microsoft support writes back, you know, like in a timely fashion, and will call your phone when something is broken. Other cloud providers don't do that. So it's especially for startups, right? So it's just a great thing to be part of.
Well, that is a great segue, actually. We can start talking about all of the things that you have done to build on Azure in this startup. I was going to say, why did you do it? But clearly Sarah has forced you into it against your will.
No, that wasn't the reason. No, the reason was technical, right? Like I think like everyone who starts playing around with large language models, a lot of the time you get pulled towards OpenAI. So we started building on OpenAI, and that was what the first prototype that Darren started using was, built on top of. As we've scaled the business to thousands of medical practitioners, there's been a lot of load come in, and we've hit a lot of edge cases. And Microsoft really was the best place to come and build on top of large language models. And it remains that place today. which is really cool to go through that journey. It's a spot where we can host our own models and we get access to really good compute, and the compute's actually available for us to use, which is important for us. But also a huge aspect for it was the fact that Azure actually allows us to deploy the large language models into separate regions, so that we can have resilience against capacity constraints in certain regions, or just general internet noisiness, which causes the application to slow down, which is really important for us. So the hook into Azure was definitely the large language models, but we're loving being here.
Yeah, well, the thing that I notice when I'm in there is there are like 1 million models in the catalogue, and I don't even know what all of those different models do.
Yeah.
But I presume you know what you want to use in there.
Well, we do, but it changes every week. And there's a new paper. So our like Lachlan and I, my other technical co-founder, we spend a lot of time just reading all the papers as they're coming out. And then looking at the different training patterns, thinking, can we train one ourselves, or should we use one of the open source ones? Should we use one of the proprietary ones? And then we write a lot of scripts to test them against each other. And that's where Founders Hub credits can really help, because when you're running tests which cost you money, you really want to get a good result, but they cost money, and you're just running a script. And that can add up really quickly compared to sort of the Web 2.0 kind of web development. That didn't add up as quickly as when you're building on large language models.
But you are finding cost-effective ways to use Azure.
Yeah, totally, because you kind of like, once you find what works, it's a game of them working out how to make it efficient. Accuracy is absolutely critical in an application like PatientNotes, because you just can't have a medical practitioner say something and then the large language model output something else. So we're always looking for how can we craft the context window to have the right elements in there from the transcript, and how can we make it really fast? Because sometimes we're working with psychologists who are doing 1.5 hour consults, and it's full of words. And, if we go back a year, the largest context size was probably like 4,000 tokens. It's blown out a lot since then. But what we got to work for a 1.5 hour consult then is different from what works today. So we're constantly modifying and adjusting and trying out the different models, making sure that they're efficient. But at the moment, we also tend to optimize towards accuracy over cost optimization, because we believe that all the models are becoming more efficient in the way which they're being run.
Yeah. When I see stuff about the vectors and the embeddings, and that seems to me that is around making it more, rather than counting every token, making the meaning behind it more the thing that drives how it works, so that it should be theoretically less expensive today than it used to be when AI first came out, because I did AI in my degree more than 25 years ago, and that was not the AI that we have today, right? It's a completely different beast.
Totally. And in my previous role at Zendesk, we had a machine learning team which built incredible models, customized models for every single customer. And they were expensive to train, but inference was really cheap because it was just binary decisions which were being made. The cost explosion just comes because the context windows, every single decision needs to have all this prior context to then predict the next token. That's a lot of compute to be running through consistently, and as those windows get bigger and bigger, that's just chewing up more compute capacity. So it's been really interesting, right? Like, to build something reliable, because the clusters around the world of compute have not always been available at the same, and they degrade in different ways than I'm used to from technical systems degrading. A lot of the times, like, you're used to, like, when a system reaches a level of capacity, it just stops. whereas LLMs seem to just slow down. So monitoring performance became really important, and getting tricks to kind of like figure out how to keep it fast when a single model slowed down or a single region slowed down has been where we've spent a lot of time, so that medical practitioners aren't sitting around and waiting for their notes.
Yeah, and you said that they said a minute is too long to wait.
Totally. Like if a medical practitioner is sitting at their desk just waiting for the computer to do something, really, if they wait for more than a minute, they're gone. They just think, I can write this better. Like, why am I even sitting here? And realistically, they've probably got a patient sitting outside their door, which they could be talking to and helping. So performance becomes really important. You know, in the early days, you know, some of our notes would end up taking 10 minutes to generate. It's just unacceptable. Like a product can't be really useful to medical practitioners if it's doing that.
So today you have them generated in less than a minute, and you're doing it in a way that's cost effective, and you're building a business on that. So
totally, it's wild. At times it felt not possible with LLMs, especially when new ones come out which are slower and they're better. You've got to like make the trade-off of like, do we want to do that? But I think we do lots of different tricks. We deploy globally in different Azure regions. It's one of the core benefits of being on the cloud, on the Azure cloud, is you can actually have different access to different capacity in different regions, which can be faster. And then we've built lots of mechanisms in place to extract context out, so that when we send the prompt, we're actually sending smaller prompts and sort of not just everything through. So there's a lot which goes on behind the scenes. You know, it's an area which at the start, it's really easy to build, but then to build a scalable, reliable, performant application, which people want to pay for and want to stay subscribed to over time, it's difficult. That's where we've spent nearly all of our time in building the business.
See, I know you're the CEO, but when I see how excited you are about building the product, it makes me just think you're a real developer at heart, right?
Oh, Sarah can tell you that.
Yeah.
No, like I was in management in large tech companies, but getting back to writing code and building this is just so much fun. And my enjoyment comes from helping someone who's not in tech do their job really well, because I think that's kind of like the responsibility for people who are in tech. Like we have the opportunity to take something which is new and modern and enable society to work better, and to not fear it. You know, back 8 months ago, most of what we were doing was actually talking to medical practitioners who were scared of using AI. They wouldn't touch it. They've been told not to touch it. You know, and we said, well, like we can do it safely. We can do it so that your practitioner data doesn't end up in random spots. We can do it being HIPAA compliant, you know, for the US and especially even in Australia, like the Australian data principles or privacy principles. Like we can comply with all of these things and you can use AI. And they're like, really? You know, and I think getting them over that hump was really important. And there's still a lot that have to get over that hump, which we spend time, you know, in one-on-one calls with them, telling them it's okay. Like if you're built on the right systems, you can make sure that there's no logs that contain sensitive medical information for your patients. You can make sure that everything is deleted and only stored in your practice management system. You can make sure that none of the internal employees have access to that sensitive information unless you provide it to us. A lot of those pieces are really only built into enterprise SaaS, but in healthcare, I think like you've just got to do it in the early days. And if we don't do it, then people won't adopt AI in the way which it can really help them.
I think that Yeah, one of the things that really excited me the most and gets a lot of response from crowds when I'm talking at conferences is the levels of protection that there are built in. So, that you can start with the system prompt and the meta prompt, that you have grounding to stop the hallucinations, and then you have the filters that will stop stuff coming through. And also kind of like the jailbreak stuff and all of that you can also turn on, like the code filters, the content filters. But when we were talking about that, you're kind of the opposite to what a lot of startups would need in there. Like a lot of them will
Totally.
turn them all the way to low tolerance so nothing is getting through. But you have the opposite use case.
Absolutely. So, so much work in the industry has been put into making sure that AI systems are safe to use, and we quite often are dealing with conversations where there's things which will trigger all of those filters. So, if it's a psychologist who's working in sexual abuse, or we even had a fun one where a physiotherapist was talking to a patient who said that they were using their Theragun. And then, the next few sentences was around like gun use, right? It was the gun which pummels your muscles. It wasn't a gun which the safety teams are probably trying to make sure isn't talked about. So we've had to pivot the other way and say we need these filters to be as high on the scale as possible, which was a huge win coming to Azure because we could actually control them. Azure gave us HIPAA compliance in being able to use the tool, and then it also helped us with content filters. But it's just we've also had to put in, because we go so high, we've also got to put in systems to make sure that our system isn't abused as well. So we have a lot of logic which kind of makes sure that it is a medical conversation which is occurring between the practitioner and the patient. And if you're trying to use this in a different way, then we kind of reject it.
That's at the system prompt and meta prompt level that you do all of that.
Yeah, it's mostly prompt based, and also using LLMs to do analysis of what's coming through.
Yeah, so specialised LLMs around medical stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just spent way too much time in retrospect. It feels like a lot of time has really been spent in that. But it comes from all of the demos we've done and the customers we've talked to. In the early days, it was Darren who was pointing them out and my wife who was pointing out, why did it allow me to do this? Or why this doesn't make sense why I can do that? And then, Sarah would get on calls with folks and you'd see little hallucinations and we'll be like, no, can't have that. So there's no quick win there. It's just a lot of methodical work of trial and error.
I mean, you can ground it a lot harder in facts, but then it's going to generate less to help you.
That's right. And we also, we've done all the tricks. We used, there was probably 4 months ago, there was a real sort of big push around providing examples.
Yeah.
And making sure that you gave, in your context window, you gave examples.
Yeah.
But examples bleed through into the output. So that wasn't a good strategy for us. And there's RAG techniques and all of those others, which are basically content, bringing examples in or bringing extra context. Some of them work, some of them don't. You've just got to try it. And then you've got to have your test suite to be able to validate that it's good enough. The hardest thing though is monitoring.
Yes.
How do you run a system like this with thousands of professionals using it and you actually monitor that the output is good? So we've spent a ton of time on that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I have something on that as well, but but I think I need to look more into that because we were talking about earlier how they keep bringing out more and more stuff. Like
Yeah.
almost every night, there's more stuff to help you based on, well, it's kind of the same model you've got where Darren was getting you immediate feedback from stuff that he saw with patients every day. We're getting feedback from all of our customers around stuff that they need more of, like the monitoring things. And I have seen something on that too, but I haven't looked into it yet. Where do you?
It comes out every day, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
magic thing about this technology at
Yeah.
this time. It's like being in the early days of social media. That's when Sarah and I both met. Early communities are fun to be part of.
Yeah.
And that's what makes being in tech awesome, just the rapid speed of change.
Yeah. You change the world and you see it changing with you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We are going to start with a demo so we can see everything that you have built up and what you do, and then we will go on to see how that is all working for your startup.
Hi Sarah, my name's Darren. I'll be the physio looking after you today. Before we get started, is it okay if we use PatientNotes? It captures our audio and does all of my clinical notes and can give you an output of our session today.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
Perfect, I'll just start the session now. Okay, so you put on your new form that you've got right-sided neck pain. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I work in tech and I do all of the bad things that you're not supposed to do. You know, I work from bed sometimes. I definitely don't get up once an hour, even though I hear that's what I should be doing. And so I'm just starting to really feel that tension build up. I've tried sort of, a couple of Sarah stretches, but I'm really starting to worry that I might be doing some, permanent damage.
Sure thing. Well, we're here at the right place. So with that tension, you pointed there to more on your right side. Is that where it's located?
Yeah, I really feel it sort of from the, base of the neck and then right down.
Yep.
Yeah, just sort of then just the whole thing.
Sure thing. And are you getting any pain or pins and needles or numbness down your right arm at all?
I would just say that sort of twinges in the shoulder.
Yep.
And then I do sort of, I wouldn't call it pins and needles, but it just sort of, like pins and needles, a little bit of tension, a little bit of numbness in my pinky every now and again.
Sure thing. So that's quite an intermittent sensation down into the little finger.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm typing, but then also I spend way too much time scrolling on my phone, and that's definitely when I feel it as well.
Sure. Now, is there any of these symptoms on the left-hand side?
No, not really.
No.
So I do wonder if I sort of type more on the right or, scroll too much on the right, as I'm sure you understand.
Yeah, and we'll have a good chat about all those things later on. Any pain down through the mid-back or lower back, or is it quite isolated in the neck?
No, not, yeah, it's definitely like a upper body thing. The rest of my body seems pretty fine otherwise, yeah.
Sure. How long's it been around for?
Look, I mean, I probably started feeling it about 18 months ago, but then you just kind of go, oh, that just must be a one-off thing. And then it's definitely progressed. And now I'm like, oh no, it's more of a daily thing.
Sure thing. And are you getting any headaches or head pain with this?
Oh, no, actually, no.
No, super. General health-wise, any other major operational illnesses that I need to know about?
I'm just going through IVF at the moment, but apart from that, it's not really,
Yep.
I don't think that's neck related.
No, but thanks for sharing. That won't impact on our treatment, but it's really nice to sort of bear that in mind. And over the past sort of few months, have you had any scans or investigations such as x-rays or MRIs?
Oh, no, should I have?
No? Well, again, that's one thing that we'll assess today, and I'll give you an outline as part of our action plan as to whether we need to go down that pathway. Medication-wise, are you taking anything for the neck?
Every now and again, I just have an aspirin or an ibuprofen, but nothing prescribed.
Sure. And you mentioned that your workplace, like the postures, that aggravates symptoms. Have you noticed any other positions or activities during your day-to-day life that brings on the neck or the arm tingles?
Not really. I would just say that when I'm sleeping, like when I'm on my left-hand side, like if I sleep on that side, I don't really notice it. But then if I've slept more on the right-hand side, sometimes it wakes me up a little bit in the night, or I feel it in the morning.
Yep. And following consults, we might actually get you to bring your pillow in and we can have a good look at that, because I can recommend the best sleeping position and posture as part of that. So what we might do now is I want to have a look at your neck and see what's going on and actually the cause of the problem. So what I want you to do here is, do you mind looking across to your right side for me? So just rotating around to the right, and tell me what you feel as you go around there.
it probably just hits a point where if I went much further, I don't really want to.
Yep. And you're sort of going to around 60 degrees of that right rotation. Any discomfort going down your right arm when you rotate your head around that way?
I wouldn't call it discomfort, but I'm like aware that
Okay.
that's where I'm at the point of.
Yep, just a little fuzzy feeling or something like that. Yep.
Yeah.
Now just look round to your left for me, please. Yep. Okay. Yep. You're definitely going a lot further around to the left and going about 85 degrees there. Do you mind if you tilt your head to the right-hand side for me, please?
Sure.
Yep. How does that feel in the neck there?
I can sort of, it's not pulling on anything, but I can feel, I don't know, just feel,
Tender?
yeah.
Yep. And again, any arm pain with that?
No, not when I'm tilting my neck.
And let's go to the left-hand side, please. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. How does that feel there?
Yeah, I can feel it's like tight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tight on the right-hand side.
Yeah, well in there, but don't feel anything there, it's just all up in here.
Sure thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is actually have a feel of your neck,
Sure.
and we're actually just sort of see, and
Yep.
there's some tenderness through that C5-6,
Yeah.
and again, that's sort of restricting your movement. And now, Sarah, the good news is that I do think that most of it is mechanical in origin, and just having a look at those range of motion. So I think our treatment plus some education about your workplace, about not on your laptop, in bed, and sort of some of that guidance will be able to help you out. What I'd actually recommend is that we get you in for a couple of sessions over the next few weeks, and I'm really confident that we'll have you feeling sort of 80 to 100% better in that time frame. If that doesn't improve, then yes, we might look at things such as an MRI, but I really don't expect to go down that pathway. But overall, what I'm going to do now is actually sort of just send you a summary of what we've talked about, the need to get up and move more regularly, and it's actually about every 35 to 40 minutes I want you to be moving.
Oh, okay.
I definitely don't want you to be sitting in a crook position or with your head rotated or tilted for long periods of time. And I'll give you some advice about sleeping, and that'll all come in the action plan that I send you. And then if that doesn't settle, we'll look at some scans. But thanks for coming on in today. And as I said, it's definitely something I'll be able to help you out with. And look forward to getting the summary of our session sort of via email as soon as the session finishes.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Darren.
No worries.
Cheers.
So, Darren, talk us through what happened in the demo.
Yeah, so running through the session with Sarah, I was able to sort of really listen and understand what she was going on about with regard to the reason why she came in. So being able to capture the audio rather than be over the top of a computer or over the top of a pen and paper just gave me the ability to listen to her needs, what she presented with being the main symptoms, the reason why it might have come on board. And then I could sort of highlight sort of some of her own words and terminology in her main condition, and that's sort of why she's come to seek help.
Oh, that's really amazing. I noticed that I went to the doctor myself this week, and he wasn't there, and another doctor had to do it, and she said there were no notes in the system at all.
Unfortunately, it happens too much. One of the really interesting things I've worked with as part of this startup is working with the compliance agencies, working with the government bodies, and even with the sort of the insurance agents of the medical professions. And the biggest thing we hear of is litigation happens because of poor notes. You've got an industry of amazingly smart people, surgeons, vets, physios, GPs. They're really terrific at what they do, but they're often poor at capturing what they do. So this tool's actually brought the ability where they can listen to their patient, they can hear their patient, and they can document it without having the burden of all of that admin, which lets them down. It's like having, you know, a surgeon who's fantastic at what they do, but if you don't record that, it opens up sort of issues that might track them for sort of years to come.
I mean, part of the problem is probably, you know, the time that you are with the doctor is only about 10 minutes. And if they want to spend all of that time with you, talking to you, they don't then have any time afterwards before the next patient needs to come in.
Correct. Three scenarios will happen every single time. Either they'll work through lunch or evenings to catch up on notes. The notes will actually sort of never get done, or they'll just ultimately sort of do a hybrid in between. And that sort of, any one of those three scenarios is sort of, again, it's just an issue medico-legally, as well as also sort of compliance side of things. And we know that when we go to the doctor, we go to a specialist, and it happens to myself, it happens when I take my loved ones to their specialist. We walk out and go, what did they actually say? You could be the best doctor, the best specialist, the best vet, and if you haven't actually documented those key things in that consult too, you miss the mark. So we know that compliance and outcomes is 100% driven about your education and your empowerment of your patients. And if you can't do that, it doesn't matter how long you spend with a patient because they only remember a couple of things.
Well, Darren, I've forgotten what we did already. So do you think we could have a look at the notes?
Absolutely. So if Sarah was in my consulting room, which is about 5 or 6 metres away from the reception, I've got the ability to completely draft my notes. So the notes are created in my format, my style, my language that I want each and every time. On screen, I can edit them before I put them back into my practice management system. So they're securely stored back into my normal system, and we will delete that off PatientNotes within 30 days. From there, I can actually give Sarah an action plan or a summary of our session that outlines all of the things that A is wrong with her, the reasons they've happened, and the management moving forwards, so that she's got a tangible asset to leave with that then can be the foundation for our clinical care. After that, it takes about 15 seconds for me to generate a patient letter. So very quickly, I can have Sarah's GP or her specialist have communications. So all those documentation being my clinical notes, an action plan for Sarah, and the communication with her medical team can all be done within a minute. So as part of a 10-minute consult, as you mentioned, if you allocate 1 minute to those 3 things, it's actually really, really good time spent.
Is it just a transcript of what you've said, or is it putting things in different fields? What exactly is it doing?
Yeah, so the whole consultation will be bundled as a transcript, and then our AI prompts will then output it in the format that I want. So it will actually exclude a lot of things that we might talk about, the chit chat. Sarah and I might then go on and talk about what she's doing on the weekend. These elements can actually be deemed as to what's clinical and what's not. So I just dissect the clinical information that I want out of the system, and each user can have that. So it's not a direct transcript, it's a clinical notes sort of summary of my consult.
Oh, so only the relevant bits, and so all of the personal information. That's really clever. That's really good.
Yeah, a lot of smarts went into that. In the same way that if I'm a physiotherapist, there's aspects of Sarah's social weekend that I might not want to be capturing. But if I was a psychologist, that's pertinent to our consult. So we'll pick that up and put it into clinical relevance because our AI prompts that we create, we give context as to what is and isn't of clinical relevance.
So if she talked about playing tennis or playing golf, that might well be in there.
Correct. That'll come up as her sports and her pastimes, but it won't tell me that she had 3 Chardonnays whilst after tennis. But if I was working in a psychology, I might actually want to pick that up.
What's really interesting about that is how different everyone wants their notes to be. You'd think, oh, for medical reasons, let's just standardise and have a standard template. But that's just not what medical practitioners want. They want it slightly customised, and it's different per profession, which is also lovely with large language models. You can do that. You know, it's the first time with technology that we can do this, which I think is why medical practitioners are enjoying it so much.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because otherwise everyone would go to the GP for everything, but they don't. They go to different specialists for different things. So it makes sense that each one would like a different set of prompts. Is it prompts?
Different set of notes, right? Like we just think about it as capturing their notes in different ways.
And we've been able to set up surgeons, GPs, allied health professionals, vets, arts therapists. So the ability to then bespoke on a user by user or by clinic is the power where AI is taken. And I think the great thing from a health professional's point of view, it's one of the first times in almost 30 years I've actually seen health professionals getting technology early, because we're usually getting it last in terms of at the primary care being the GPs or the physios. Our systems can be quite sort of old in that front, but using this technology has been amazing.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that earlier, that AI is one of the fields that has hit the healthcare sector before anything else, because there are so many useful use cases where you can think immediately this is going to impact not just the patients, but also the professionals behind it. It's going to save lives on both sides.
And so I think that's what's interesting is once we have the notes is the things that you can then do with it. So once the clinician has said, yeah, these are my notes and this is what I document as having happened in the session, we can then take those notes and then do lots of other administrative stuff with those. So Darren, you have a long list of other prompts. You know, you mentioned the patient summaries, which is really helpful for me personally. I've used it while going through IVF. Being able to keep track of everything that's happening, to be able to have my doctor then be able to summarise that in a form that I walk away and can digest has been really, really helpful. But I then know that some of our customers have been using it to create all of their medical letters, their reports, and saving lots of time. Once those notes are finalised, you can remix them, you can turn them into different things off that base set of clinical notes. It's really great.
And you can also build notes based off multiple sessions, and that really helps in the NDIS space or the My Aged Care, these systems that are very admin heavy. And then a story there is that it often takes a practitioner around 1 hour to do an assessment and 4 hours to do just the report. So we can really build that foundation of that report in a matter of seconds that saves them hours and hopefully sort of means that more patients, more users actually and clients get seen.
I didn't go into it in the introduction, but you are a physiotherapist yourself, and you've been in the industry for how many?
I've been in the industry for 27 years, and I think that's been the thing that's sort of highlighted over these last few years is the admin load for all healthcare professionals has just gone up exponentially, and so a tool to help us out is great because it means that I have a staff and I have 3 clinics in Melbourne, and all of them are screaming for admin time. It either means that my staff are working through lunch, putting in admin time, or as we mentioned before, not getting the notes done. Now, what this sort of means is that it reduces the risk of burnout in the industry. I'm on one of the physio professional bodies, and we're already hearing from our students coming through at undergraduate level, they're worried about burnout in the medical industry before they even do a day's work. So providing them with tools to reduce this and seeing my team just having banter in the lunchroom, getting home on time, not working of an evening, that's been just invaluable from my experience.
And I would imagine that all of your medical terms, all of your prescriptions would be in there, so the spelling and everything comes out correctly of those things. Is that right?
Yeah.
That depends on the pronunciation in some cases, but we've put a lot of backstops to flag that because you might have a patient that comes in and 3 patients in a row will pronounce a medication very, very differently. So if the therapist or the doctor reiterates that, it's going to then pick it up sort of meticulously. However, we've also got some prompts that sort of say, the patient mentioned medication X, did they actually mean medication Y? And so not having notes with spelling or grammar mistakes, again, is fantastic because should a set of notes get taken up in front of the regulatory bodies, they can often be an embarrassing thing for the clinician if they're illegible or if they're sort of grammatically not representative of the consult.
Or if it's the wrong prescription.
Or if it's the wrong, correct.
We also have quite a few medical practitioners who are dyslexic.
Huh.
And like, they're just like, wow, like finally a tool for me, you know, because that was their huge burden. They love treating people, but their documentation was just a drag on them, which they really struggled to do.
Yeah, the more you tell me about it, the more I think this is going to save so many lives as well as, yes, as you say, with mental health, it's just going to reduce that overall stress and burden. Wow, spectacular.
And I think what you mentioned before about, you know, does it pick up certain things? So Darren and the team have worked really hard on building out a prompt library, and that library is available for people to be able to be inspired by other sets of notes. So even if you come in and you go, well, this is how I do my notes, there's the ability to browse and understand how other people might do notes in your industry, which we're seeing people being like, oh, that's a good idea. I might just borrow that one. And then also with our team, when people give us feedback within the tool, we're able to suggest prompts to them and say, hey, do you know if that's what you're trying to achieve? How about you try this one? Which is really exciting to see people learn about AI prompts as well. That's definitely been the most exciting part for me, is seeing thousands of health practitioners who are now learning AI, as part of their day-to-day job, which is really exciting.
Oh, I guess not just the AI, really, it's helping spread best practice, because a lot of practitioners probably don't have as much time as they want to keep up to date on the newest things that are being done in the industry. And if they can see prompts that will kind of trigger that thinking in them, then even without having had that training, it might lead them to a different level of questioning.
Yeah, absolutely. We see that. I kind of think about that as we transitioned everyone on, they had to learn how to search on the internet, They had to learn how to phrase the search terms. And now we're teaching medical practitioners how to use AI, how to prompt AI. It doesn't matter if they're using, any of the AI tools which are available to them. If we get them better at it, it's a great outcome for us all.
And one of the interesting things I sort of reflect on is almost 6 years of university, I think we probably spent about 2 minutes on how to take notes. And that will be across all different professions. So everyone then creates their own versions of notes. And our traditional practice management systems were very much template driven and sort of saying, capture this text field or a yes, no. And it made us very didactic in how we sort of involved and worked with our patients. Now being able to just let it chat, I think the sky's the limit with what AI can bring into our notes. But the problem is that practitioners want it firstly to reproduce their exact notes to the exact pronunciation, and grammar, the comma here and the full stop. Whereas AI is going to have a little bit of variability. And the users that we've found that have succeeding the best are those that are going, okay, I'm really happy that this does 98% of all of my admin work, saves me a couple of hours of work, and I've got to add a sentence here or there. So there's a little bit of flexibility. If you think AI at this point in time, whether it be PatientNotes or other system, is going to get it reproducible to the exact format each and every time, then sort of those users sometimes just go, oh, it changed it slightly different. It might have been better, it might have been worse, but they just don't sometimes comprehend that it's different.
Yeah, I guess they are expecting a voice recording to then do voice to text, but you've tried to do better than that. You've tried to make it like smart summarize the pertinent information so that it's more readable. Because nobody really wants to read like this massive thing, and they don't have time to read that massive thing. They would like the key points brought forward so that they can see what's relevant. And especially if you're then reading another professional's notes. Like, nobody wants to read that essay.
And a great example of a feature that was added recently was what we call the dictate feature, which means that I can just dictate my clinical notes or a letter to it. And if I just speak naturally, and it just does my notes in the exact format. Now, clinically, I sometimes stumble over words and I'll mix a few little things. And my issue with dictation was that I had to talk sort of verbatim to it. And if I made a mistake, I had to start again. Our system will actually just, if I mix up between Sarah's right and left side of the neck, I can correct that and I don't have to restart again. So saving wise for a specialist or for a healthcare professional, I can just punch out my clinical notes in a matter of seconds as a summary instead of having to do that in front of the patient. So that's been an amazing tool as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's get rid of the dictation where they're like stop, rewind, go again. It's just lovely.
Yeah. Well, with generative text, I often find it predicts what I want to say better than I actually say it.
Yeah.
So I'm all for using more of that. But yeah, you do need to pay attention. We often say in Microsoft, what we want our AI to do is to be your co-pilot, not your replacement. So if you're looking for something to do your work for you, this is not it. But if you're looking for something to be your partner, then this is going to enable you to go faster and be better and to capture more of what you intended than doing it alone would do.
And one other little feature that I've found really useful is doing telehealth sessions. I can use Microsoft Teams, do a telehealth session, and as soon as I hang up that call and I press stop on PatientNotes, my notes are all done. I can send an action plan straight to them and it's in my system. So normally I would have to sort of hang up the call and go, I've got to spend another 15 minutes doing my notes. And that just flowed from one patient. That caused a burden on my day. So just having that feature with telehealth is another feature that users have found really, really useful.
Well, thank you for joining me today. This has been so much fun, and I know it's going to inspire a lot of the developers out there to think maybe they should start their own startup. All they need is that one idea that is going to impact people's lives in a meaningful way. And that's it. Oh, and a few best friends, I guess.
That's it.
That's what. Thanks so much for joining me on New Breakpoint.
Thanks for having us, Michelle.
Okay, so we are going to hang around for another 10 minutes to answer any questions that you have, so do put them in the window now. Otherwise, you can find our resources on GitHub, and we hope that you will join us next month for the next episode. Thanks for coming.